Good morning, beautiful people, and welcome to the last day in the month of the August, the month that came with all the vibrance of an African summer, wrapped up neatly inside our rainy season. I mean, who knew that we could have both at the same time? As we bid farewell to the eventful month of August, let's take a moment to sip our tea or whatever it is that gets you going in the morning and touch on a few of the hot topics that had everyone buzzing all through last week. Welcome to Breakfast Extra. First off, we had our good old end bad governance protesters back on the streets, and by that, what I mean is they have been released from custody after the judge threw out the case due to non-appearance of plaintiffs. God bless their resilience. It looked like the powers that be decided to play a little game of arrest first, think later. They rounded up these vocal citizens, if you remember from the 1st of August, threw them into cells and then dragged them to court. The kicker is they had no legal representation, no plaintiff, thus, I guess, no case. The judge had no choice but to just toss the whole thing out. Now, if you ask me, it looks like there wasn't any real reason for their arrest other than to just stifle the voices that dared to speak up. But hey, in true Nigeria fashion, we move. And on a much graver note, we've got to talk about the tragic incident in Abuja where Shiite protesters actually attacked police officers, leading to the loss of 2 brave officers. It's heartbreaking, really, honestly. And now, even those who live in otherwise safe towns and cities are starting to realize that insecurity isn't just a hinterland problem. It's knocking right at their very front door. Maybe now the government will finally take securing the country seriously and perhaps maybe do so. Speaking of security, we'll be taking a look at the scorecard of the recently resigned NIA boss, Ahmed Rufai Abubakar, after he tendered his letter of resignation to President Bola Tinubu at the State House of Abuja last week. In fact, we were on the show when he did that. After 6 years of insecurity, one has to wonder what exactly was achieved in all that time, as an SBM report reports that kidnapping is on the rise even since after then. But just when you thought August had given us every single drama, well, hey, no, it hadn't. Our doctors decided they had to also take a break. They embarked on a 1-week warning strike after the abduction of their colleague, Dr. Ganiyat Popoola. Now, the government, ever so quick to promise, they say they'll find and get solutions. Maybe finally they'll get off their lazy derrieres or backsides and do something about it. But meanwhile, these same folks in governance are busy trying to secure the repatriation of doctors from the US and UK. If you remember, we talked about that a couple of weeks ago. Well, let's just say in this current situation, it seems like they've got their work cut out for them, and plenty of work it is. But as we all know, in the famous words of LD the Don, and I'm hoping that Judith the TB is going to join me on this one. Judith, do you remember this one? One day, ego better. Judith, for Nigeria. I see you mouthing the words. But remember that one by LD the Don?
Of course.
Apparently, he tells that initially he wanted to say, some say, one day, ego better.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, both are true.
Well,
someone says one day it will indeed get better, but clearly not today.
Not today. Not today. But in any case, let's say a good welcome to our viewers this morning. Welcome, everybody. It's going to be a great one here for Breakfast Extra. Do stay with us, because coming up, we've got the dailies and so much packed in for a Saturday edition right here. Stay tuned.
Good morning and welcome to another edition of Breakfast Extra. And we're kicking things off with the dailies this morning, where we'll be bringing you the top stories and headlines making waves across Nigeria and beyond. And also, that's not all. You want to stay tuned here, because we'll be diving into some of the most pressing issues of the week. We'll be discussing the controversial case of the detailed #EndBadGovernance protesters, which was recently thrown out of court, a situation raising eyebrows and questions about the state of freedom and expression and association in Nigeria. We'll also take a closer look at the resurgency of Mpox, or monkeypox, in Africa, with a special focus on Nigeria's recent acquisition of vaccines as well. You want to go out and get vaccines when it's time to roll out those vaccines. Promise me you will. Well, What does this mean for healthcare, right, for public health? And are we prepared for what's ahead? And later on the show as well, we'll also be exploring the troubling concept of detention without representation, a topic that speaks volume about the state of human rights and, of course, justice as well. We might be doing a bit of singing. Who knows? Who knows? Who knows?
Why are we singing?
One day, wasn't it you that set the ball rolling?
That was from before. We're done with that now. We can't be singing in every segment. But yes, I will follow your cue when it's time.
Sing the national anthem.
We're still working on that. All right, so grab your coffees, guys. Let's check out what the papers has for today. Let's start with, I would figure, the Vanguard newspaper for a Saturday. Why our security can't track kidnappers, investigation tells. Fault not from our end, says the NCC. Politicians use tracking device for mistresses, enemies instead of criminals. Retired senior police officer tells. Wow. That is interesting. A family grants Onyeka Owenu's request buries her quietly in Lagos. That happened recently. Oil theft reduces Nigeria's output by 27.4% to 1.4 million barrels per day in 10 years. And Edo 2024 boycott candidates who boycott debates, says group. And Bruno Lambadia rejects Eagles. No! What are we going to do now?
Yeah, we'll get another one.
Rejects Eagles' job. But yeah, it's not that easy. It's not like as if there's somewhere in ShopRite where you can just get coaches.
Yeah,
foreign coaches. Remember what our last Nigerian coach said?
Yeah.
See ya.
You see, and the thing is, I blame Nigeria Association. I blame NFA, by the way. They're the ones who's also doing this.
Wow.
Because they're constantly owing, either they're owing the coaches. We already have a bad rep as an association. We already have a bad rep. It's pretty bad. It's really bad.
Let's move on
now. If you're
now.
watching this, wherever you are, don't come to Nigeria to join. Don't pay your money. I mean, it'll pay. Joking. I'm joking. We'll switch gears now from Saturday Vanguard to our very next front page for today. From Saturday Vanguard, we switch all the way to Saturday Independent. If we can just pull that up. Saturday Independent, the very first one that comes, or rather Punch, there we go. It's going to be the Saturday Punch for you. There we go. How hashtag End Bad Governance protest costs NIA DSS bosses their jobs. That story is on page 8. Why we celebrated Bichi's exit DSS officers. You saw that video on social media where they were celebrating at the lobby there. At the very top there, kidnappers abduct doctors to treat gang members, says NARD. That story is on page 4. Handouts to poor Nigerians won't address hardships, says Ned Nwoko. That story is on, it's going to be there inside of the Saturday Punch as well. Tribute, says music icon Onyeka Onwenu buried in Lagos. That story is on page 16 and 17 of the Saturday Punch. At the bottom there, I spent 10 months in prison for resigning via text message. 26-year-old photographer. That story is on page 14. My wife was pregnant with 11 babies for 3.5 years. Cleric. You can find that story on page 25. Why I am silent on issues raised by Igwe MacAngel. That story is on page 17. At the bottom for page 5, 161 Nigerian students fail UK border checks denied entry. Flooding kills 195. Cameroon set to release dam water. That story is on page 12 of the Saturday Punch.
Alrighty now, moving on. We move on now to The Nation newspaper. In front and center for The Nation newspaper for a Saturday here is Boko Haram invades Yobe school, shoots students dead. Very sad story that made rounds yesterday on social media. Storms college on 10 motorcycles. They say soldiers killed 9 terrorists in Kaduna shootout. At the very top, NNPC seeks private firm to operate Warri Kaduna refineries. On page 7, Super Eagles' new coach quits after 4 days. Just get your money. Governor Oti Obi, others pay last respects as Onyeka Owenu goes home. And one 9-day ordeal in kidnappers' den by rescued medical students. I would love to hear their tales. I can't wait to have them here on Breakfast Extra. And how we were consigned to jail in China without trial. We're talking about this today. Detention without representation.
Yeah.
In this case, trial in China. In any case, we'll be talking about that story you read from the previous paper about the 26-year-old photographer who was remanded in prison for 10 months because he couldn't afford bail. So those are some of the topics for later.
Sure.
And finally, Edu condemns military role in economic recovery. That's it for The Nation.
That's it for The Nation for this Saturday. We'll switch gears now from The Nations to the Independent newspaper. And the first one that comes at you, 2027 polls. Can PDP survive the heat of internal crisis? Squabbles hitting party fortunes. Robust system to surmount odds. Members, okay, so that's party has robust system to surmount orders. Osadulu, deputy youth leader. That story is on page there. That got you there. That got me in a ring for a while. At the very top there, Lagos records 27,955 cases of sexual violence in 6 years. Agency, you can find that story on page 31. PSC promotes Lagos Police Com. 7 others to AIG. Elevates 676 others. That story is on page 28. Lawyers, activists decry police abuse of human rights, call for accountability. You can find that story on page 29. Restore pipeline security contract taken away by Buhari to us. OPC urges Tinubu. That story is on page 7. Pegging age limit of WAEC, that's WASC's, jam candidates at 18 years. A northern agenda that pretends danger. Ex-NAP's cheer. That story is on page 19 of the Saturday Independent. NAFDAC condemns online report on Nigeria's dairy markets. That story is also on page 5. Afenifere condemns ex-lawmaker for repaying 35 years old student loan. That story is on page 19. And for the entertainment segment there, Aduni Ade, I took the hard route to fame. That story is on page 9. Well, even better, because the shorter one is always... You know what to say about short quotes?
Get you there faster?
But it does. What does it do at the end?
I don't know.
Short quotes always get you caught short.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah,
I'll remember that one next time. The Guardian newspaper for Saturday is up next. Why Nigeria's love for GMOs may lead to food colonization already happening. Find that story on page 42 and 43. At the very top for the Guardian, how non-state actors can deepen democratic culture values in Nigeria. And 4 years after, Bankers Committee completes restoration of National Theatre set for unveiling. And I am excited about the unveiling for the National Theatre because it brings back memories from the early 80s and late 80s of such a grand structure. And I hear that it's even better. All that money went to good use, is what they say.
Exciting times ahead. I cannot wait. I'm very interested to see the events they'll be holding there. It won't be no more Island or Victoria Island every time.
Nah, no. Come to the mainland. We've got good spots. What other paper do we have for today?
Switch now from the Guardian Weekend to our next front page for today.
Weekend
and
Trust.
That is the Weekend Trust. As we switch gears now to the Weekend Trust, so why illegal oil bunkering persists? That story there you can find what we are doing to stop it. Navy, NNPCL's newest war strategy, impact on environment communities. You can find that and all on the Weekend Trust. Maman Bichi Abubakar Akpabio Dino in the news this week. That story is on page 24. Building collapse, over 90 die in incidents in 1 year. That story is on page 13. At the bottom there, ethnicity, religion, not my problem. General Martin Luther Agwai retired. That story is on page 25. And finally, major bills pending legislative action in National Assembly. That story is on page 34. And that's all for the Weekend Trust.
Swiftly moving on to the Saturday Times. A panic in hospitals as doctors refuse to shift ground despite FG's threat. They're threatening no work, no pay starting soon. But doctors are like, no. By the way, they're fighting for the release of their detained or abducted colleague, Ganiyat Popoola. It's in the news. Petrol scarcity. Independent marketers blame extortion at depots for rising costs of PMS. I bought at 900 naira per litre from a store, or rather from a station recently. And Lagos records 24,955 cases of sexual violence in 6 years. Man docked for allegedly defiling his 10-year-old daughter. Sad. Elegant stallion Onwenu finally laid to rest in Lagos, and Regina Daniels sparks pregnancy rumors with prayer for twins. At the very top again, police summons NLC's Ajero. We saw him get to the police invitation, or rather honor the invitation, but also walk out full and whole. And yet again, another invitation. And finally, for the Saturday Times, Edo, don't allow unaccredited APCs polling agents. PDP tells INEC.
I was looking at the stat there for Lagos records 27,955 cases in 6 years. That's why I decided to do the math. That means in 1 year it was 4,159 cases thereabout. That means in every day there was over 100 cases of abuse.
Wow. That is a lot. But then with that kind of report, you'd ask where the results are, who's going to jail for these crimes, or if we need to know, or don't they think that it's something that people need to?
Yeah, I think there's an open sexual abuse or sexual violence agenda or register for perpetrators of the abuse. But worse is the ones that have slipped through the cracks that you don't know about, that have slipped through the cracks. Really sad. We'll switch from the Saturday Times now to the Sunday Nation.
Saturday Nation.
Saturday Nation, there we go. It's right up there on your screen. We're moving now to Kenya. A tale of two unions and how tables turned. That's from Kenya there. At the top there, changing times. One union has mellowed while the other is on the receiving end. Governor's fresh demands on counties' billions. That story is on page 7. The People's Billionaire, larger than life generosity. I can find that story there, the other side there. The bottom there, strike motion north has traditionally been associated with a fiery leadership, yet this time the union quietly called off the teacher strike, while Kupet, which has for long been seen to be less combative, has been on the streets and at loggerheads with the Teacher Service Commission. You can find that story as it pertains Kenya's education there for pages 4 and 5. I think that's pretty much it for the Saturday Nation all the way from Kenya.
If you're interested in some Malawi News has got these headlines here from page. A recipe for disaster, poor preparations worry Madbedi, Gaba sideline, Chester recall. And to the side, FDH Bank sets build up for Bullet Eagles, Pachema finals. That's still in sports. In fact, it's on sports all through. Cricket Malawi team reaps fruits, and NBS Bank PLC pumps 5 million kwashas into Junior Queens, and my heart dies every time I lose, says Osaka. Where has she been, by the way, Naomi Osaka?
She's been,
fine
first of all, she got pregnant.
Fine player, that one.
Yeah, she got pregnant after that. She first got pregnant and then she tried to come back, mental health issues. She's struggling with mental health and all kinds of things. It's hard competing on such a level and again, the fact that she beat Serena Williams there in the US Open and then trying to come back from that big one, it's been hard for her. But hey, the fashion she's been giving us at courtside has just been interesting. That's what it is. But the US Open has been somehow this year, Joe. It's been somehow this year.
All right, we move on now to the Star newspaper from Kenya. Once again, Ruto Nyanza toward signals making of Western Alliance. Ruto expected at Mombasa cement bus cremation. And elders urge calm. Death toll rises to 5 in Tana River clan skirmishes. And a report here, police ignore intelligence of Shakahola. And that's all for the Star. If you are interested in some Kenyan news, there for you.
Ruto's had quite a couple of months, I will say, just to see him come out of all of that he went through, the entirety from the from the protests to the strikes, to flushing out his entire cabinet, to doing his new cabinet. It's been one thing after another. But hey, it's good to see him smiling on
What is he going through that we're not going through here?
Well, I mean, you should ask Tinubu, not us.
That's where I was going.
Anyway.
She said it.
Well, speaking about protests, coming up after this is our big report, and this time it's about the hashtag End Bad Governance protest as a group calls for the release of incarcerated protesters. Plenty of this and more after the break. Stay with us.
And you're welcome back. Yes, it's me again standing here right next to the TV. Of course, you know what that means. It's time for the strips this week. We'll be taking a look at all the satirical cartoons that made, well, let's say the papers, looking at everything from a satirical eye. But then again, in Nigeria, sometimes satire doesn't cut it. Realism is what actually faces us when we check some of these cartoons out because it's just too close to home. Wouldn't you agree, Judith? Yes, indeed. So together with Judith, we're going to be taking a look at some of the cartoons that were very interesting to see last week. Let's start with the Guardian newspaper. Thank goodness we no longer have a national carrier. After they finished capturing the presidential jets, the national carrier jet would have been next. I don't know exactly how the presidency sees these matters that involve its jets or assets that are being seized by other countries as against how it exactly pertains the sovereignty of a country like Nigeria, the giant of Africa, the one other countries look up to. I don't know if you're as embarrassed as I am for Nigeria, Judith. What's your take on our jets being seized and all the jokes we've been making about them since last 2 weeks?
Well, you're not going to like what I would say.
No, go say it.
And I don't know if Nigerians would also, if our viewers would also like what I will say, but I have no choice. So I'm going to take my hat off as a journalist and put on the hat of a citizen and say that I am very happy that it was seized. And let me say this. And just the whole twist and turns of it being seized by another country until Nigeria owns up to whatever went down between the Chinese firm and the other parties involved. I won't name names until that is being straightened out. I'm so glad it was seized. And also, why do you need 3 private jets? Why do you need that many private jets? Just so that we're being very honest. What do you need them for? Where are you going to? Where? I'm glad it is. I mean, that money that you would have used to maintain it for the amount of time you're traveling to go do God knows what, work, stay, I forgot, forgive me, work, stay. Maybe you could stay back here with that money and throw it into something.
I never saw it like that. I was actually going to go like, ooh, that's so unpatriotic. But then again, we would never have known the level of corruption or misappropriation that went on regarding the jets and the, what do you call them, all that happened from after we realized where it was coming from.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, you got a point there. I agree with you. It's okay. We'll let that one go.
Yeah.
Put back your hat on as a journalist. Let's move on now to our next strip. Our next strip, there you have it from the Punch newspaper. Dad, don't tell me you support this after the saying, catch them young. Now, this is about the restriction being put on students who are supposed to write the NECO exams and WASC exams. News, FG enforce 18-year age limit for WAEC and NECO exams. And yes, dear, it's catch them young, keep them till 18. Now, I know that there has been in law a certain policy that states that for entry into universities, you must be 18. We did not know about this, Judith, but it's been in existence for a very long time. This is only because they want people who are in tertiary institutions to already be legal enough to make certain decisions. And of course, they also anchoring on maturity of students in these universities. So it's already there in place. I actually spoke to a lecturer friend of mine who thought it was a grand idea. However, as Nigerians, we always want to boast about our children, push them forward. Oh, my child started school at 15 or 16. Judith, when did you get into university?
Oh, you don't want to know. I think I was, what, 16, 17?
You see?
Yes.
There you go.
Yes,
Do you think that there were decisions that you made then that perhaps you would have made differently if you were 18 at the time? Think about it. Think about
then I
it.
wouldn't be here. You get what I mean? Like, I wouldn't be here. I feel like the manifestation of Judith here is a combination of the mistakes and failing forward that brought me here.
Okay.
Do you get what I mean? So I think that, and again, I would not use, a woman who, by all the standards scientifically, psychologically, we just develop faster than men do, right? And so I wouldn't do that, right? But again, I would like to juxtapose it to other developed countries, right? In the matter of age.
Thank
right?
you. You're going my way now.
Yeah. So let me just set the ball rolling, right? So to juxtapose it to other developed countries, it's not a matter of age. It's a matter of can they do it? The capabilities that they can do it. Poaching the talents as they are young, catching them young, training them, investing in their education, bringing out fishing for the bright minds, bringing them out. They have so many programs. If you use the US, the UK,
you're
Europe,
very correct.
and they do all of that. So it's not a matter of age. I think we're focused on the wrong thing.
You're
it's
correct.
a matter of to find those talents and start to groom them as early as possible.
So I'm thinking of graduates from MIT that have on record been less than 14 or even 15, or even, I can't remember the exact age, but there was a very young chap in MIT. So what happens if that was a Nigerian instance? Are you going to stifle his intelligence because he's not yet 18 before he goes into school? Plenty of questions there. How many papers have we done so far? 2? We got to hurry. Let's do another one. Let's do another one. Let's do another one. All right, now that's the Daily Trust newspaper's got this one. Last week there was this video, or was it a picture of a bandit who was openly showing his face and also posting on social media. That's what this is about here. It's a simple cartoon of this guy with wads of cash, an AK-47, and somewhere in Zamfara Forest, the heading there says, this guy is just enjoying the largesse of his, nefarious act. Sad state of insecurity in Nigeria, but this is what happens. We've got the case of the doctor who's still abducted, which is leading to protests now by the doctors' union. And we're going to talk about this, wouldn't we?
Yes.
Judith.
Oh, absolutely.
We've got a report from SBM, don't we?
Yes, on insecurity. I'm really glad. One of the reasons why we decided to do this segment on this show is that the talents that come up with this very satiric and very real life situation that very in a comedic way, but real life, it's always.
Remember what I said about satire?
Brass,
this is not satire anymore. This is actually
this
the
is real
instance.
life. Exactly.
This is real life.
It's right in your face. You're seeing it. And it's not funny. It's not funny at all. And what's interesting is that I have seen videos that have trended on social media, and people will track these people down. If you are able to find a whistleblower that is anonymous, we don't know who they are, but you are able to find them, go get them from their home, arrest them. We didn't even know all of this was happening behind the scenes. What is taking you so long to find somebody whose image is out there?
Listen to Judith. She has the answers.
I'm gonna leave
All
it
right. All right. Moving on now to our last one for today. We've got this one, and it is courtesy Business Day newspaper. I always love Business. They actually look forward to their cartoons. They've got some very interesting ones. Today's one, or rather this one from Through the Week now. It's got lawlessness, insecurity, corruption, inflation, debt, and a Nigerian. And I dare say that this is the only thing these are the things that actually hold us back from actually being who we want to be, the greatest of all. But Nigeria always Nigerias, and there you have it. Judith, it's a simple one. Your thoughts, and then we'll move on with this. What do you think about Nigeria, current state?
I like the way lawlessness also is pulling him back as well. You know what I mean? Because even if we try, if we're going to get rid of inflation, bad governance, corruption, our lawlessness as a people is another thing.
Our individual lawlessness. Whose
it's
fault, though? Whose fault? I mean, if you grew up in a system that's broken down, that's the only, what conditioning that you give any kid who's grown up in Nigeria. They see people get away with it. They want to do more when it's their turn. So,
another, speaking of, being the passing on the baton of, just that type of behavior and social cultural norms. Another is bigotry as well. We pass on hate. from
Yeah.
one generation to another. And so it begs to ask the question, if we get rid of that, what is that one thing that would help us get rid of lawlessness and bigotry in Nigeria? Food
I
for
can't
thought.
answer that currently.
Food for thought.
Honestly, yes. It's indeed, that's it. And that's it for the strips for today, a Saturday edition here for Breakfast Extra. Strips are always very interesting and entertaining to see. Sometimes could be depressing because they just aren't so funny anymore. But you're welcome. Thank you very much, everybody. Do stay tuned. We've got some of the hottest topics from over the week coming your way for discussion here with our guests. So stay tuned for that. We'll be right back after this short break. And you're welcome. Now, today we begin with a development that has gripped the nation in the aftermath of the End Bad Governance protest. A federal high court in Abuja has granted a court order allowing the detention of 124 protesters for a period of 60 days pending further investigations. This ruling has sparked widespread concerns about the state of civil liberties in Nigeria and also ongoing struggle between the authorities and those advocating for change. The situation raises critical questions about the balance between maintaining law and order and respecting the constitutional rights of citizens to protest.
Now, while the fate of these 124 protesters remains uncertain, the battle for their release is far from over. Earlier this week, a youth rights campaign group held a press conference at the International Press Center in Lagos, calling for the immediate release of their leaders, Adara Moye, Michael Lennon, and Musiu Sadiq, along with others who were arrested during the hashtag End Bad Governance protest earlier this month. Now, this group is demanding not only justice, but also a swift end to what they describe as the unlawful detention of their comrades. Now, let's take a look at, we're going to take a look at the details of this press conference very soon. But before we do that, let us just quickly introduce our guest who is going to be joining us live. He is none other than Hassan Soweto, and he is going to join as an advocate as well as one of the front runners there for the hashtag End Bad Governance protest. Well, Hassan, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you for doing this.
Thank you very much.
Yes, good morning, and thanks for having me.
All right. Now, you're an advocate, right? So what are your thoughts on the government's response to the hashtag End Bad Governance protest, particularly in light of these detentions and the broader implications for freedom of expression?
I think it's very sad what we are seeing in the country, because don't forget that this protest was simply about the condition of hunger and hardship that millions of Nigerian people face. And what Nigerians who joined the protest were expecting was that with those 10 days of protest, would have been able to register in the minds of the authorities the need to begin to address those demands. But right now, it's been weeks after the protest, the demands have not been addressed. But what we are seeing is that those who played roles in the protest are now being held in detention facilities across the country. We are talking about 124 in Abuja. There is about 30-something, in Kaduna. Across the country, we have about 2,000 plus people who are rotting in detention facilities right now. This is very sad because it shows that even to register your displeasure about anti-poor economic policies in this country comes with a steep price. And the Nigerian authorities, especially the police, have to ask themselves that if they make protests, peaceful protests impossible, then exactly how do they want Nigerians to continue to express themselves? Because peaceful protests are the only means in a civil rule that citizens can be able, to express themselves, to reject government policies, and to try to, encourage government to change whatever policies that they think are not good for them. And that is why it is vital that this element of civil rule is kept available to the citizens. Citizens must have the right to talk, to organize. And that is why, it is important that those in the authorities recognize this. Our call is that those people must be released immediately and unconditionally. And it's so terrible. They were arrested in the middle of the night, 2 a.m. That was where Michael Lenny was picked up, alongside with Musio Sadiq, Sankara, as well as one other. They were picked up in the middle of the night by a combination of NIA, DSS, and police officials, and they were immediately, blindfolded and driven around Abuja for hours before they were deposited, in the cell at IRT. They have gone through torture, because two of them were released subsequently. And at the press conference, Sankara, who was released, told us about what they suffered, how they were tortured during investigation. They were investigated for over 13 hours by about 5 teams, of security agencies. And from what he told us, the condition in the detention facility is so terrible. They don't have any sleeping materials. They're sleeping on the bare floor. Monsieur Sadiq has fallen ill for the past 1 week, and the IRT and police officials are not allowing medical attention to reach him. And that's why at the press conference, we had to send a public appeal to the Nigerian Medical Association, as a matter of urgency, to send a medical team to the detention facility in order, to actually see these people and ascertain the state of their health, because their families have not even been allowed to reach them. They were arrested and not even allowed a phone call. Even their lawyers were only able to see them on, I think, about 2 days ago, since the past 25 days that they have been in detention. So you have to ask yourself whether or not there are no civil liberties in this country. When you hear this tale, how can you pick up a Nigerian person and in the middle of the night, blindfolds them, and then you don't allow them to even call their lawyer? You don't allow their parent to see them. The mother of Adamori Michael Lenny was at the press conference crying. They have not seen their child for nearly a month. And you have to ask yourself, what exactly are the charges? They are talking about terrorism. They are talking about treasonable felony. But in the real sense of the word, we all saw what happened when the embargo governance protests across the country, especially in Abuja, where Adamori Michael Lenny played a leading role. What was the evidence, of terrorism or treason that you can find in the protest in Abuja? They are talking about carrying a Russian flag. Did that even occur in Abuja, where Adamori Michael Lenny, participated? So what we are actually seeing is an attempt to use national security, to try and, violate citizens' rights and cut back at civil liberties. And this has a precedent. Don't forget that in Lagos too, the government, the police, for instance, tried to create a scare ahead of the protest. They said they even defused a bomb at Ikeja. Up till now, the police have not told us, whether they have arrested anybody in connection with the bomb. But you all know that Lagos State is not among the states in this country that expresses terrorism or any other actions that is in line, with terrorism, except from normal crimes. But ahead of a protest, the commissioner of police actually issued a statement saying that they defused the bomb. And since the protest, they have not even tried, to report on further investigations about that. And that's to tell you how national security is being utilized cynically to try and keep Nigerian people from being able to express their right. And it is not good, because what this means is that when you use national security as a scarecrow, when the real danger to our sovereignty then happens, how are we going to recognize it?
All right. Well, Hassan Soweto, I must say that every single time you come on, you always raise very pertinent issues and important questions that must be asked and be looked introspective. Again, Hassan, many thanks. We have to take the news at this point. Hassan Soweto is an advocate here. We're not signing you off. We just quickly need to take the breakfast headlines at this hour, and we'll come back to this conversation. Stay with us.
You're watching Breakfast Extra on News Central. My name is Mizuna Peel, and these are the headlines now. We begin by telling you that the Nigerian police have summoned President of the Nigeria Labour Congress, Joe Ajero, and General Secretary Emma Ogbaja to appear at Force headquarters on September 5, 2024. This new summons comes less than 24 hours after Ajero complied with a previous invitation concerning allegations of criminal conspiracy, terrorism, financing, treasonable felonies, subversion, and also cybercrime. This time, Ajero and Ogbaja are being asked to address allegations of criminal intimidation, conduct likely to breach public peace, and malicious damage to property. They have been invited by the Force Intelligence Department of the Nigeria Police Force. Our speakers at the town hall in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, organized by New Central in partnership with TAP Initiative, have raised concerns about the Nigerian government's response to citizens' agitations for better governance. The event was the latest in the town hall series by New Central Television, discussed the nationwide End Bad Governance protest, which held across the country and marked by violence and brutal response by security personnel in some parts of the country. The participants, including human rights activists, lawyers, youth leaders, and journalists, criticized the utter disregard for the yearnings of Nigerians, which include improved governance, economic reforms, and government accountability. New Central correspondent Leka Onabanja monitored the event and filed in this report.
After everything, the federal government decided to call for a dialogue in which we said is the only way for us to sit down and negotiate with them. But very unfortunate, they take it the way they want, and they did the same thing that they always did as a politicians. Instead of reaching out to us to face our major challenges, in which we mention it to them that those things that we came out to set in the protest, in which education is part of it, unemployment is part of it, fuel subsidy is part of it, insecurity is part of it. All those things we mentioned, none has been attained to. All we see is the Minister of Youth calling his friends to negotiate with them.
I said the Nigerian revolution will start in northern Nigeria. That was at least 5 years ago. My reason for saying so is the knowledge that northern Nigeria is the most afflicted part of Nigeria, but it had been kept supine because of religion. The political and economic class have kept the people underfoot, and they are responding violently, because even though you are providing leadership to a subset, there are other people who are not captured in that leadership.
It may be a coincidence that the very first person that appeared on the list of those that were brutalized by the police happened to be from New Central, Bernard Akede, who is also a friend of mine. Civic space in the country. So what you're seeing really is what I'll call the liberalization and democratization of intimidation and harassment of journalists in this country. What do I mean? In those days, it used to be within the purview of perhaps the police and maybe the DSS. Whenever they have a disagreement with certain people in the media or certain media organizations, to be the ones to carry out actions, repressive actions against them. But nowadays, it has been liberalized. The governors have gotten into the act. So you write anything that is critical of a governor, a civilian governor for that matter. The next thing is that you are picked up and you are locked up somewhere. You write something that is critical of security forces, whether the army, the police, maybe an IG somewhere gives order, and then they pick up a journalist. The same thing at the level of the military. So everybody has gotten into the act of intimidating journalists and the media. And that absolutely is unacceptable, and we have made it very clear to them that we no longer tolerate that situation where people can no longer express their opinion. It's a fundamental right.
Rights activist and National Secretary of the Nigeria Union of Journalists, NUJ, Achike Chude, and News Central correspondent Bernard Akede have expressed deep concern over the growing victimization of journalists in Nigeria. They expressed this view at the town hall in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, organized by News Central in partnership with TAP Initiative. They maintain that the harassment and intimidation of journalists in the country is often carried out with impunity by both state and non-state actors.
31st of July, News Central Television's crew was carrying out a live broadcast at around the Lekki toll gate, and we are accosted by some police officers, and live on camera they stopped our programming. Now, while we continued our live broadcast, you also may have seen that video where myself and some other members of my team were physically harassed by thugs from that Ojota area. One had a shovel, some had a green pipe, and other sticks that they were armed with. If I see green pipes now, I have PTSD because I was hit on the back with one of those pipes.
If going by reports, journalists in Nigeria are among the most challenged the world over. And the intimidation and the harassment of the media, of journalists, stopping them and preventing them from practicing their profession, is among the highest in the continent. So you write anything that is critical of a governor, a civilian governor for that matter, the next thing is that you are picked up and you are locked up somewhere. So everybody has gotten into the act of intimidating journalists and the media. And that absolutely.
And that's all the news this hour. Join us again at the top of the hour for 10 o'clock for another bulletin. Thank you very much for staying with us. We now continue with the discussion we were having with NBAD governance advocate Hassan Soweto regarding the response from the Nigerian government to the protesters who have been detained and exactly the state of those who are in custody right now. Hassan Soweto, it's good to have you still here with us. Thank you very much for staying.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Now, you mentioned the number of people who are being detained across Nigeria. You also mentioned the state of some of the heads of these groups that have been arrested or were arrested earlier in the month. Now, could you also please tell us exactly whether they are being represented adequately? Because that's a big topic, especially on today's show. Who's representing them and how is that going so far?
Well, in a number of states where we have been able to reach, the arrested protesters, there is the efficient legal representation. I mean, for instance, with regards to the 124 protesters detained at the IRT in Abuja, we have the, very effective legal representation, by Mr. Femi Falana SAN, Olumide Fujika SAN, as well as, about 10 to 15 other lawyers. Equally in Kaduna, we also have Mr. Pascal, a very brilliant lawyer who is providing legal representation for 28 protesters who are currently in detention right now, as well as the likes of Khalid Aminu and others who are in DSS detention in Kaduna. In Kano and several other places, we also have such representation. The Nigerian Bar Association has been very good. They've got a legal team which is providing pro bono legal services for protesters across the country. And a number of non-governmental organizations and are equally trying to see what role they can play. So, but the challenge has been the ability to be able to reach some of these protesters. Because in a number of places, you have either the DSS or the police preventing lawyers from being able to assess the numbers of those who are actually detained, as well as their identity. I mean, for instance, now, the DSS dungeon in Kaduna State, we only have, we have details that about 7 protesters may be held there. But the only person that we know for sure in terms of his identity is Khalid Aminu. But when Khalid Aminu was arrested, he was arrested in a group of about 7 people. And the DSS Director General in Kaduna State has prevented a lawyer from being able to even assess Khalid Aminu in order to be able to ascertain whether he's alone or with people. So in this sense, these are the kind of challenges that lawyers are facing. Something which shows that not only did the state decide to arrest protesters, they are also effectively trying to prevent legal representation from getting to protesters. Something which again raises the fact that the conduct of the Nigerian government as well as security agencies actually needs to be seriously questioned right now. In fact, what we are calling for now, we have to make appeal to media executives, to professional organizations, trade unions and co, that what we actually need right now is a public probe panel which can actually investigate the conduct of this government and security agencies. Because if you are not careful, what we are seeing over the past few weeks, these crimes against the Nigerian people, if you allow it to go unchallenged, then it's going to form a very terrible precedent. But don't forget that, yes, Nigeria has gone through this kind of history before under the dark days of military. But you could explain that away to say that, yes, when you have military rule, those kind of violations of citizens' rights, are expected, But this time around, you are talking about a civilian rule. You are talking about a democracy that is at least 24 years old. And yet, the recognition and respect of the basic liberties of Nigerian citizens, is not even accepted. There are ways that even detainees have to be treated when you arrest people. Because the only difference between security agencies and kidnappers is that security agencies they act under, the orders, of the state. But right now, what we have is a situation whereby security agencies are are conducting themselves in exactly the same manner as kidnappers. But when you arrest people from their home at 2 a.m. in the morning,
Might I ask you, as you're talking about liberties and free will and the right to association as regards to the protests, past and present. Let's talk about the future. Do you see a future of Nigeria in the future where protesters can protest, or Nigerians can go out on the street and protest to their own free will and will never be intimidated?
I don't see that in the coming period.
Why?
And that's why it's important. Yeah, because, this is the first 15 months of this government, and it has already, demonstrated clearly that it is not prepared to recognize the right of the average Nigerian citizen to freedom of expression and association and assembly. So, so that in a way already sets the tone for what we are going to experience for the next 4 years or thereabout. And that is why it is important, that we don't allow this to go unchallenged. Don't forget right now that there are court orders in a number of states, in Lagos State, which permanently restrict protests to certain places. In fact, our lawyers have just discovered that that order was obtained in a very, very illegal manner. It's not even done properly according to the proper procedures of things. But yet, you had a court, grant that, something which also tells you the state of Nigeria's judiciary. So right now, the media is being, assaulted. The judiciary is kept in the pocket of the executive. What are you going to have as a product of that? What you are going to have really is a society where citizens are just slaves. So that in the coming period, if you say we want to organize a protest, many people are going to be afraid of coming out, given what we have experienced over the past 10 days. And that's why it is important, that we continue to insist that the right of Nigerians to freely express themselves, to freely organize and assemble, to express themselves against any government policies must be respected. We need to have a situation whereby the Nigerian government, as well as any officials of the state who are directly connected to these violations of people's rights, are reported to the appropriate international bodies, and appropriate disciplines, are equally, provided for them. Because without doing this, we are going to form a precedent that means that, the state will continue to ride roughshod on the rights of Nigerian people.
So might I ask, right, given the history of protests in Nigeria and strike actions and the outcomes of it, do you think, let me ask about this hashtag End Bad Governance protest to begin with. Was there any result at the end? And giving also from hashtag End SARS protest as well, we saw the outcome of that. Should Nigerians go back on the street to protest? Should protest be a commonplace? Should it be a means to an end in terms of change for Nigeria? What do you think? What do you think should be?
Well, what I would say is this. I always like to use the example of a slave in captivity to describe what is happening to us in Nigeria today. A slave in captivity is in chains. The chain itself is very painful. The process of breaking free from the chain is equally painful. So in that situation, therefore, the slave has to choose between two levels of pain, two forms of pain, and which one he has to go through. And oftentimes, a slave will realize that pain of breaking free from the chain, he has to go through that, because it is only that offers any glimmer of hope at all. I think that that is the situation that we are in Nigeria today. The pain of trying to break through from our chain is enormous, and oftentimes our struggle appears not to achieve their immediate ends. Yes, look at EndSARS 4 years ago. You would think that, with the way that struggle unfolded and the intensity to have police brutality again. But yet, we continue to have it, even in this last protest. Look at all of the demands of our protest. After the protest, what has happened? In fact, in a way, economically, we're in a worse situation that we were in even before the protest. Look at the fuel queues across the country. Nigeria is shutting down before our very eyes. We're buying fuel for 900 naira and 1,000 naira since the protest. But these are additional reasons why we have to prepare to go on the street again.
Okay,
but
so
what all of this show really is that we need to put our hand to the capitalist system that is behind all of this crisis.
All right, so with everything that you've mentioned, this is a very big deal. I mean, especially pulling the conversation back to the detention of these heads of the groups that were protesting, especially Lenin. Now, is it too soon to actually inquire whether it has garnered or drawn international attention from groups or advocacy groups, Amnesty, for instance? Is there international attention currently, or are you expecting that this will happen soon? Is it time?
Yeah, there is a number of solidarity that we have had internationally, and it's growing. Yes, Amnesty International, but also socialist groups, trade unions, in Europe are also planning to take actions. Over the past 2 weeks, we had a number of demos at Nigerian embassies in a number of countries over this. And the Nigerian diaspora, we are equally reaching out to them, because right now, it is very important to ensure that the diaspora is involved in what is happening. And they are also going to take their own actions over the coming period to demonstrate that they stand with the Nigerian people. So it will keep on growing. And you have seen what is happening with the Nigerian Labour Congress leadership and how that has also attracted the attention of the international labor movement. So that we are going to get to a point whereby both at home and abroad, the Nigerian government and its officials, will not find any resting place if they continue, to attack the rights of the Nigerian people.
And do you think that when this international attention comes forth, do you think perhaps that is when the Nigerian government will take better action regarding these detained few?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we have seen it happen that when the struggle receives an international attention, and everywhere they go to, they are being challenged, that sometimes that can, force the government, to want to amend its ways. We have seen that in the past. So we expect that if it gets to that stage, then we can see some changes. But we will also not be surprised if we are dealing with a government that is impervious, to reason at any level. And if that comes to that, then the Nigerian people would have to decide on what is best for them going forward.
Then finally, on that line of questioning, regarding the supporters from outside of the country, the advocates from outside of the country, have they shown interest in these detained many who are currently in detention? What have they done? From before the protest, we could see exactly what they were doing, how they helped, how they pushed. What about now? Are they also helping in these cases?
Well, what I've said before, it's about the political actions that advocates across the world, including unions, including socialist groups, have taken and they are prepared to take in the coming period, depending on how the situation develops. It will not be possible for me to reveal all details, knowing the situation. But obviously, it's going to happen that at some point, we are going to have, Nigerian people in the diaspora, but also unions across the world taking actions across the world to demonstrate to the Nigerian government that the world will not sit idly by while the rights of the Nigerian citizens, are being trampled upon. That they are not going to sit idly by when, protesters or protest organizers will be thrown in jail over so-called terrorism charges. Whereas the real reason why they are thrown in jail is because the government does not like, the message they are making, the message about the need to change all of the economic policies that have kept people in a situation of poverty and hunger. So this would happen, and it continue to grow. It also depends on the dynamics of our own struggle here, if you're able to go back to the street and all of that. But definitely this struggle has enjoyed and will continue to enjoy international solidarity from all corners of the world. We will continue to use every platform, to expose the crime that the Nigerian government, is committing against the Nigerian people. And very soon, the Nigerian government and its officials will realize that anywhere they go to, people will challenge them. At conferences, at meetings internationally, people will ask them, what is happening back home in your country? That is where we need to get to, and we will get there.
Speaking of crimes, I have to ask about the incarcerated protesters. Have they had their day in court? What is the latest with them?
No, they haven't, and that's a challenge. Last week, the Nigerian government, the police and the Attorney General refused to bring them to court, but they approached the court to get 60 days additional days of remand. But what has happened now is that our lawyers are challenging that, and hopefully we hope that by next week, we'll be able to know when that suit will be had, and then what is going to be possible. But alongside with the legal challenge, of the 60 days remand, is also the need for us to keep up, the political passion, the political campaign, so that everywhere across the country, the urban governance movement and the groups associated with it are going to be meeting, to discuss what can also be done. But what Nigerians should know is that very soon we are going to be back on the street again, both to fight for the release of our incarcerated colleagues, but also to continue to fight for all of the demands that we have been making since early this month, which the government has ignored. Fuel price, energy prices, the cost of living, lack of employment, the high cost of education, and the complete miserable situation that many, Nigerians are in, especially young people, because, of the way the country is. These are the issues that led us to go to the street earlier on, and these are the issues that would make us to go back again because they remain unresolved. The government has ignored it. The president keeps on jumping across the globe, why the people suffer. Don't forget that even while we were having the protest, that was when the government was making, ready the new presidential jet, as well as a new, luxurious vehicle for the president. So if they really were interested in our issues,
Okay, then.
they would not be doing that. Yeah.
All right. Well, Hassan Soweto, you have been quite the guest this morning. We appreciate you for your insights and also just giving us update on the incarcerated leaders there for the hashtag End Bad Governance protests. And we'll continue to follow up on this story as it continues to develop and unfold. Once again, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good morning.
And that's Hassan Soweto there. He is one of the advocates for the hashtag End Bad Governance protests. We're going to a short break. When we come back on the other side, there is plenty more. Stay here. Now, this week, News Central hosted a pivotal town hall meeting that gathered thought leaders as well as activists and, not to forget, concerned citizens to discuss the state of Nigeria with a focus on governance, security, and the future of our democracy. Now, the conversation was both enlightening and urgent, featuring notable voices like Dele Farotimi to Obiangeli Ezekwesili, who didn't hold back in their assessments of the challenges that we as Nigerians face.
So to help us unpack the key takeaways from the town hall, we have with us Martin Obono, the Executive Director of the TAP Initiative, an organization at the forefront of advocating for better governance and civic engagement in Nigeria. Mr. Obono, welcome on News or Breakfast Extra. Well, that's where you are. Grant, it was good to see that you were at the town hall only just yesterday. So reflecting on the town hall meeting, what were some of the key issues discussed that you believe are most critical for Nigeria at this moment?
Thanks again for having me, and hello viewers. So some of the major issues and conversations that resonate with everybody in the meeting was the need for the government to end hunger. Virtually everybody reiterated the idea that Nigerians are hungry, people are dying of starvation and deprivation, and that the government has to do something. Another issue that resonated around the whole was also the need for consciousness to continue to be awakened so that governments can actually take heed to people's plight and demands, and then reverse some of the policies that have brought about these unending sufferings and deprivations that Nigerians are going through and facing. So for me, these are the two key takeaways from the meeting, and there are no holds barred, because at the end of the day, everybody has also agreed and said that if the policies and the hunger continues in Nigeria, people are willing to hit the streets, and there is also no time limit that anything can happen. So bottom line, Nigeria is a ticking time bomb, and nobody knows when the next wave of protests will happen and how it's going to happen and where it's going to lead us.
I must ask you, you are part of TAP Initiative, which is one of our partners for this town hall. From your perspective at TAP Initiative, what specific actions are you as an organization or an initiative organization, CSO, advocating for to improve transparency and accountability in Nigeria's governance? Words that shouldn't be in the same sentence when it comes to Nigerian government.
I seem to have lost Martin's there. Perhaps maybe it's the connection. We've been speaking with him from Abuja, where he joins us via video chat. Unfortunately, we've lost that connection. But you were asking him regarding the initiatives that, as well as the TAP initiative, I'm wondering what other bodies are also doing to help governments.
Oh, those codes as well, connected development. We saw Hamzat Lawal, who was also there with his microphone, talking about accountability and transparency. There are also other speakers. We also saw one of the prominent faces of the hashtag #EndBadGovernance there, see him there right there on the screen. He was also one of those contributing at the town hall meeting. I understand we have Martin's back on. Martin, you're back on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Apologies for the network disruption.
That's okay. Go ahead.
So I was saying that our organization basically is at the forefront of transparency and accountability in terms of judiciary, because there are quite a lot of things that you can actually seek accountability for in Nigeria. So what we have decided is to focus majorly on seeking some form of transparency and accountability from judicial officers, because at the end of the day, we know that the judiciary is extremely powerful. The judiciary can make anybody, can unmake anybody at any point in time. And for such an arm of government that is very powerful, we demand some level of accountability from that arm of government, from judicial appointment to interim judgments, to how they are also conducted and how they also uphold the code of ethics for judicial officers, and how the remuneration of and welfare of judges, including staff and staff of judicial workers, actually, who are not on the bench, but just the clerks and the rest of them. So these are the kinds of things that we demand accountability for in Nigeria.
All right, then, Martins, I hear you when you say that Nigerians at the town hall were actually crying for food. Nigerians are hungry. How loud was the cry for security? However, as we can see in current weeks or recent weeks, we've seen plenty of cases of abductions. We've seen a resurgence of the Boko Haram instance. Was the cry for security as loud as that for hunger? And while you're answering that, how can Nigerian government actually help change or do anything about the insecurity that we're facing right now, from your opinion?
So I think that, yes, there were cries of people actually saying there is a level of insecurity in Nigeria. People talked about insecurity, talked about kidnappings and all that. But one of the things that I heard louder was hunger as well. I think that we need, as a country, we need to first of all place ourselves. The government now needs to not stop seeing itself as we against us. Nigerians, for us to deal with insecurity in Nigeria, we need to first of all come down from our high horses as government officials. Government officials need to come down from their high horses and then begin to win public trust and confidence. First of all, if they win public trust and confidence, Nigerians will relate easily with them as to what is happening and whatever suspicions they find in their environments and their communities. And this is the point where we also talk about the need for community policing and why state policing is also very essential and critical in our clients. So far, the same police who brutalizes you when you try to express yourself or exercise your freedom as a protester is not the same police I would trust with certain information, because I feel they can betray me, they can turn against me if I provide a certain kind of information. So what most Nigerians do is to look away. So until we begin to build public trust, the government officials, people in government begin to build public trust and look at Nigerians as Nigerians, just like Dele Farutimi said yesterday. We need to, first of all, understand that we are citizens and we are all together in nation building. But so far, government doesn't see us like that. People are crying for hunger. The president is buying private jets, buying yachts, having thousands of aides and hundreds of aides rather, and spending lavishly. National Assembly is budgeting for different things, buying new cars. And so there is no public trust, and Nigerians don't feel a sense of belonging in Nigeria. And so it's a country that feels that citizens feel like it's we against them, so let them do whatever they want to do. And so we are not building the country together. Nigerians, government officials don't build countries. It is Nigerians and the people, the citizens, that build the country. We are the ones who will say, okay, this is what you need to do. This is what you don't need to do. And I mean, it's just like the meeting we organized yesterday. I've had calls from people saying, Martin, how do people summon the courage to host this kind of meeting? Don't you know the government is going to come after you? But at the end of the day, people need to talk. So the moment people begin to feel like if we host and have conversations, government is going to come after us, there's going to be reprisal, then what you then realize is that what you get out of it is that citizens will hold back, people will hold back, and then just wait for the ticking bomb to explode, and then that's it. And this is one of the things that brings about the various kinds of insurgency groups that you have in Nigeria, all the way from Boko Haram you mentioned, down to the ESN movement in the southeast, and what is happening in the north, in the southwest, and almost all over the country. So, because people feel they don't have a sense of belonging, government isn't listening to them, so they pick up arms and they begin to do terrible things and heinous crimes against the state.
Besides
to protect it.
Besides a lack of sense of belonging or the trust deficit between the government and the governance, what else is our biggest obstacle in achieving true democracy when it comes to our governance in Nigeria?
So I think one of that is also the kind of structure, the way elections are being done, elections are being conducted. INEC, for example, conducts an election, and when elections are over, the burden of proof shifts from the person who is supposed to be held accountable for whether or not elections were conducted truly and right, or and rightly or fairly, and then moves to the person who loses the election and says, oh, I have to prove that I won the elections. No. For our democracy to really, really thrive, once elections are conducted and won, INEC has to prove that they conducted the elections within the confines of the law, and they did everything humanly possible to ensure that that election was free and fair, and they need to prove that to the people and to the judiciary in the court of law. Until we begin to get justice right, our democracy cannot be right. Until we begin to get the rule of law right, our democracy cannot be right. So until we switch that the burden, INEC needs to prove to citizens that the elections they conducted, or the elections they conducted actually, is free and fair. Then we can begin from there. Until that structure is gotten right, I don't think we can get our democracy right.
Okay, Martins, let's talk about rights and protection. It was heavily discussed at the town hall yesterday. What are bodies like your body trying to do to help people with their rights when it comes to infringements that they may face from government or maybe the police, like we witnessed during the End Bad Governance protest?
So first off, we try to do sensitization to say these are your rights, because if you don't know your rights, that's when you don't even know when your rights are being abused. So one of the things we do is to sensitize Nigerians or young people and say, listen, you have the right to protest, you don't need police permits, according to the law. The Court of Appeal judgment in, I think it was IGP against the ANPP in 2008, where the court was clear about whether or not you need police permits to protest. So how do you behave yourself, conduct yourself during a protest and all that? So do you have a right to assemble? Yes, you do have a right to assemble. Do you have a right to protest? Yes, you do have a right to protest. So these are all the things that we basically put out there. Then another thing is, obviously, you always have reprisals. Police will definitely reach out to people and arrest people during protest and say they have committed one or two offenses. We also provide legal support to people who have had their rights infringed upon. So we go to police stations. During this protest, we were on the streets as well, trying to see how we can get people out. Currently, organizations like Hope Behind Bars is also helping to bring out young people who were also arrested during, underage people, not even young people, underage people. There were minors, over 20 of them that have been incarcerated. So organizations like that are working tirelessly to also ensure that they get people out of the police net and custody for exercising their rights. So these are the things that we also get dabbled into and get ourselves involved in.
And that's just brilliant. Well done with all the good work at TAP Initiative. And I must say now, with these conversations going on and still talks of, protests come October 1st, what would be your call to the government and also to the citizens as well, but mostly to the government? What would be your call to the government at this time?
So I think the government is saying don't protest, don't come out, and they are doing everything humanly possible to ensure that there is no protest. So I think we need to go back to the drawing board. And my advice to the government is that if the president made a decision and a pronouncement without thinking through the policy direction and the impact of that policy direction or the policy direction by saying subsidy is gone, if, as it clearly is a mistake, let him reverse it. It's as simple as that, because there is no way out. Let him reverse it. Let him reverse floating of the naira so that the economy can at least balance a little bit. And then Nigerians will not protest. That is the only way, and that is the only solution. You can't keep handing out, giving bags of rice. How many of us will the bag of rice get to? This, for example, how many are Nigerians? How many bags of rice can you possibly distribute to every home, and for how long? So the monies that are supposed to be used to do this palliative, Nigerians are not asking you for palliative. We are not beggars. We are not beggars. We are not asking anybody for palliative. We are not asking. Nigerians are not used to palliative. What Nigerians are asking is to provide an enabling environment for them to do business and thrive. And what is that enabling environment? Reverse subsidy. Nigerians are suffering. We cannot afford to be buying petrol at 900, 950, 750, as the case may be, depending on where you are. There is no equality. People want to survive. So let government reverse these very wicked policies that they have made, and then Nigerians will not protest. They won't even bother you about anything.
So, Martin,
that is my advice to the government, because it looks like the government doesn't know what to do to stabilize the economy. Now, until you ensure that the policy is reversed, then go back, make the local refineries work, and then you can remove subsidy. Because now you can't remove subsidy, local refineries are not working, and then you expect the naira to stabilize, and then you expect Nigerians not to suffer. No, it doesn't work that way.
No, they'll give you rice
No, you
instead. They'll give you rice instead
Yeah,
now.
Jesus.
Come on now. How then can you win the jollof wars between Ghana and
Oh, she
Nigeria?
went there.
Yeah.
I'm not with her on that. But Martin, a very important question
Expired
here.
rice for that matter.
Well, let's talk about the fact that as News Central and representing the press, we're doing our own bit as the fourth realm for the public now, and so are organizations like the TAP Initiative. But what else could more organizations do to actually bring to the fore these concerns and also these ills that have been committed against the people who are bold enough to express themselves?
So I want to use this medium to actually thank News Central. News Central, you're doing fantastic work as far as trying to represent the voice of the people on the streets. You are doing a very fantastic job. And I want to use this medium to also call on other news medium to at least try as much as possible to try to pretend to represent Nigerians and the voices of the people and exactly what is happening on the streets. If most of the media organizations are doing what you are doing, I think Nigeria will be in a better place as far as information and having their voices heard is concerned. So for me, I think we need more of this, more organizations to be genuine in their cause, be truly what they're supposed to be the fourth realm, fourth estates. And so we need to really encourage more people to come out and speak up, have courage. You only die once. If they kill me today, that's the end of it. In 100 years' time, if I die, that will be the end of it. But there will be other people. So the point is that don't be afraid. Come out, express yourself, try to exercise your rights. As a human being, the only thing you have is your right. And that's why it is called human rights. And if those rights are taken away from you, you are not a human being anymore. You are an animal. So people need to understand that they have to, the only thing that they really have as a person is your right. And if you do not exercise those rights, you are not a human being.
And you also collect rice. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
So we should collect rice and rice.
Judy, stop.
I'm going to stop now. But Martins, I want to say thank you so much. Well done from all the hard work from yesterday. We want to say thank you so much. We hope that this will open up more conversations. We'll see more CSOs as well as NGOs come together, as well as human rights organizations come together, to collectively amplify the voices of the everyday Nigerian. Once again, Martins, many thanks. Martin Obono, he is the head there at TAP Initiative, and he joined us to talk about the News Central Town Hall meeting from yesterday. We switch gears now to insecurity in Nigeria. All right, we'll take a look at a very serious report from SBM and so much more. Stay right here.
Welcome back. Now, in the ever-evolving landscape of insecurity in Nigeria, the recent report by SBM Intelligence paints a very grim picture of the country's ongoing battle against kidnappings. Despite numerous efforts by government and security agencies, the kidnapping crisis continues to escalate, leaving civilians vulnerable and undermining public trust in the state's ability to protect its people. The report indicts security agencies for their failures, highlighting how poorly coordinated, under-resourced, and fragmented responses have allowed criminal elements to operate within impunity across the country.
And the situation is particularly dire in regions like north-central Nigeria, where criminal groups have transitioned from simple banditry to more sophisticated forms of organized crime, including targeted kidnappings for ransom. Now, the report also underscores the growing boldness of these armed groups who have ever begun to successfully, target and overpower trained security personnel. This alarming trend raises critical questions about the effectiveness of current security strategies and the overall capacity of the state's security apparatus to maintain law and order.
Now, to help us unpack the findings of this report and delve deeper into the implications for Nigeria's security landscape, we are joined by Confidence McHarry, Senior Analyst at SBM Intelligence. Confidence, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having
Yet
me
again,
once again.
we always look forward to when you come because we learn new things.
Yeah.
And this time it's not going to be any different.
Yes,
not.
indeed.
Now, let's talk about Nigeria's security architecture. Let's talk about what was noted inside of the report, how badly coordinated it is. How does that put Nigeria in the grand scheme of things when it comes to intelligence and security? Where do we rank?
Yeah, I think we rank poorly.
In a scale 1 to 10, where would you put Nigeria?
If you're looking at it from a regional context, I think in terms of if you're looking at it from a regional context, one being the highest in terms of how worse it is. I think Nigeria is number 1. In terms of kidnapping, I'm not looking at insecurity generally in terms of the region, because of course there are some more terrorized countries like Mali, Burkina Faso, and the rest of them. But in terms of kidnap for ransom, I think in the wider region, Nigeria is actually number 1. You made mention of how poor security fragmentation has made the fight against insecurity really, really bad. But at least we've seen a little bit of progress in the past year, where security agencies, especially between the police, the military, have been coordinating, and they've been increasingly relying on the use of citizen militias, such like vigilantes and everything. But it hasn't really been enough, because most of what they usually do nowadays is reactive. It's not preventive. So there's a lot that intelligence can be used, especially when it comes to predictive intelligence, such as preventive policing can be done, but not much focus has been done. They're mostly reactive. So in case if they hear about any kidnap issue, they tend to respond when they want to, if they feel like, and not necessarily in prevention of that kind of a thing happening. And I think the kidnappers have known that there's a 50-50 chance that they get away with this thing, and it hasn't really stopped them. So they try to change that odds from 50 to 70%. So more often than not, it works. And so the more this thing works, the more it keeps incentivizing them for them to take some more.
Your report also highlights the boldness, or the increasing boldness of these criminals attacking even trained security personnel.
Yeah.
And so I have to ask, what does this say about, the current state of Nigeria's security infrastructure?
It says a lot. One of what he says is that the security situation has metastasized so bad that even things or people you consider off limits in the past are no longer off limits. Nowadays, I think where there was, should I say, a moment of light or something like a revelation in the sense of the word, where in the past it would have been difficult or would have been unthinkable for a kidnap group to attack a 7 military officer. But what happened in 2020 with the attack on the NDA, the abduction of so many security personnel, the attack on the Kuje prison facilities and everything, has sort of opened people's eyes that they could actually attack these people and then they get away with it. In many other high-profile attacks on security personnel, especially within the military framework, the military has not successfully rescued those people without the payment of ransom, even though they will not publicly admit it. So these kidnappers know, I mean, they have a network by which they communicate with themselves, so they know that if they kidnap a military personnel, it's not really going to amount to much. The military might not necessarily succeed. And I think part of what gave them that boldness was the reports in 2020 or 2021 that I think it was from the Wall Street Journal or Financial Times, I can't remember who, that said the Nigerian military had to pay, or the Air Force had to pay bandits, to prevent them from shooting President Buhari's plane when he was flying over Zamfara. So this kind of things give them a boldness. So you get to see the display of this boldness on social media, where you see bandits displaying words of naira on TikTok and everything. And then even so far as, bandits calling out the Minister of State for Defense for actually being their sponsor or something along that line. So they know that the faster they chip at something and then they do not get enough pushback, the faster they tend to go after that thing. And that is the story of the Nigerian kidnap scene for the past 4 or 5 years.
Hey, I'm hoping we have a little bit of time here, because I wanted to ask about this detail we're actually just showing regarding the numbers, specific numbers from specific states. Can you give us a correlation between the states and why these numbers are so, like Zamfara's got the record high. Yeah. Why Zamfara?
Yeah, so the situation in Zamfara is multifaceted. There are things like banditry, there's the perennial clash between the rivalry between the Hausas and the Fulani settlers, and then you also have mining, gold mining, and there's also the jihadist element. So as of last year,
do you want to go back there now? Mining.
Yes.
So minerals is also involved.
Especially gold. So the Buhari administration came up with the Presidential Gold Mining Initiative, where you mine your own gold and then you give a cut to the states, and then the states, or if you want the states to help you sell it, no problem, or if you want to sell it yourself, no problem. So that kind of a thing was a solution to the mining problem, where the government has put their own stake in it, but it wasn't really reaping benefits. So they're like, okay, let's just let you do your own thing, get your own gold out, give us our own cuts. But what it has done inadvertently is that it drove a lot more people into those kind of mining. And then we now have a situation where bandits and the other jihadist elements are also trying to control those mines. So it has led to a potpourri of so many actors. So the penchant for a law and order breakdown was very high. So as a result of that, many criminal groups have taken advantage of the fact how broad the area is and how widespread it is into the geopolitical zone, where you have forests that span up to like 4 states that are even bigger than Western Europe in size. So you don't have that enough security breakdown outside of Gusau, the capital. And if you look at the states across the northwest, the capital that is worst hit in terms of security is Gusau, the capital of Zamfara. So it's a whole lot of security nightmare that goes on there, where even the presence of security forces is so sparse and it's so well spread out that it's difficult and almost impossible to stop the problem.
Well, we're going to come back to this conversation. Confidence Makari is a senior analyst, security analyst at SBM Intelligence, and he's talking to us about the report that indicts security agencies as kidnapping continues and even increased in the last year. We'll take a short break to bring you the headlines, but afterwards, this conversation continues. Stay right there.
Welcome to News Central Now. These are the headlines this hour. We begin by telling you that the Nigerian police have summoned President of the Nigeria Labour Congress, Joe Ajaero, and General Secretary Ima Ugbaja to appear at force headquarters on September 5, 2024. This new summons comes less than 24 hours after Ajaero complied with a previous invitation concerning allegations of criminal conspiracy, terrorism financing, treasonable felony, subversion, and cybercrime. This time, Ajaero and Ugbaja are being asked to address allegations of criminal intimidation, conduct likely to breach public peace, and malicious damage to property. They have been invited by the Force Intelligence Department of the Nigerian Police Force. Now, rights activists and National Secretary of the Nigeria Union of Journalists, NUJ, Achike Chude, and News Central correspondent Bernard Akede have expressed deep concern over the growing victimization of journalists in Nigeria. They expressed this view at the town hall in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, organized by News Central in partnership with TAP Initiative. They maintain that the harassment and intimidation of journalists in the country is often carried out with impunity by both state and non-state actors.
Had a green on the 31st of July. News Central Television's crew was carrying out a live broadcast at around the Lekki toll gate, and we are accosted by some police officers, and live on camera they stopped our programming. Now, while we continued our live broadcast, you also may have seen that video where myself and some other members of my team were physically harassed by thugs from that Ojota area. One had a shovel, some had a green pipe, and other sticks that they were armed with. If I see green pipes now, I have PTSD because I was hit on the back with one of those pipes.
If going by reports, journalists in Nigeria are among the most challenged the world over. And the intimidation and the harassment of the media, of journalists, stopping them and preventing them from practicing their profession, is among the highest in the continent. So you write anything that is critical of a governor, a civilian governor for that matter, the next thing is that you are picked up and you are locked up somewhere. So everybody has gotten into the act of intimidating journalists and the media. And that absolutely is unacceptable, and we have made it very clear to them that we no longer tolerate that situation where people can no longer express their opinion. It's a fundamental right.
Landowners in Nuwalege, Abuja, who were displaced by a recent government demolition are calling for compensation. More than 200 families from Nuwalege, a rural community along the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport Road in Abuja, have been left homeless. Now, this is following the demolition of their homes to facilitate an expansion of the presidential air fleet. The displaced families have been forced to seek refuge in nearby communities. The affected individuals say they have not yet received compensation from the Nyesom Wike-led Federal Capital Territory Administration. And also, they say they have not received compensation from the Nigeria Air Force and the Ministry of Aviation. The demolition carried out by the Federal Capital Development Authority at the request of the Nigerian Air Force has left many families in limbo. Now to health issues, residents of the Kapam community, and that is in Chikun local government area of Kaduna State, have staged a protest against the alleged environmental pollution of their farms and communities by the Kaduna Refinery and Petrochemical Company. The protesters, mostly women, said that the chemical released by the Kaduna Refinery 3 days ago has devastated their farms, causing the death of their animals and also affecting the health of the residents, mainly children and women. Carrying placards with various inscriptions, the protesters blocked the main gate of the Kaduna Refinery, thereby preventing the staff of the company from accessing their offices. And in more news, a resurgence of deadly diphtheria disease has killed 10 persons and hundreds of suspected cases admitted in Kano. Consequently, the Kano state government has activated special treatment centers across all the secondary and primary health care facilities to curtail the spread of the airborne disease in the state. Commissioner for Health, Dr. Abubakar Labaran Yusuf, confirmed the resurgence and present mortality rate on Friday. He, however, refuted the escalating figures already in the public domain. Now, Kano became the epicenter of the dangerous disease since the outbreak hit the country again in November 2022. And in Edo State, we bring you news where the Edo State chapter of the People's Democratic Party has accused the state All Progressive Congress of planning to rig the upcoming governorship poll using fake INEC staff. The state chairman, while speaking to newsmen in Benin City, says that plans have been perfected to tamper with the number of registered voters in the binodal voters registration system used for the poll, and warned the electoral body to be vigilant of the alleged plot by the APC. He also urged the electoral body to publish the details of its staff already selected to conduct the election so as to defeat the alleged plans by the APC.
This unit has uncovered a sinister plan of the APC, trying to recruit young Nigerians as fake INEC staff, as technical support staff on the day of election. What is the plan? The plan is to equip these people with a chip, which they will be going around the polling units and tampering with the beavers just to add to the accredited number of voters in those polling units. You can imagine a political party, instead of uploading your polling agents properly, you cannot. You are thinking of how to rig elections. So we are drawing the attention of INEC to this fact, that the RACTEX that will be appointed by INEC, they must publish those names and their pictures and their postings.
And that's all the news we have at this time. Do stay tuned to Breakfast Extra, because we've got more analysis coming your way. And of course, we even still have one at hand, where we have Confidence McCary from SPM as we discuss the present state of insecurity in Nigeria. McCary, thank you for staying. I've got one very interesting question, one that we actually discussed about from before. What's that on your face, Judith? You look so cute. In any case,
I'm reading my tab.
let's talk about the resignation of the last NIA boss, and that is by the name of Ahmed Rufai Abubakar. Now, we saw certain videos of people jubilating in certain offices, but that's not the concern here. The concern is, what efforts did he put in terms of national security that we should be concerned about in the past 6 years where he's held office?
It's not a question that I have direct answer to, given how secretive the Nigerian security intelligence services
judging by the stats that we have.
Yeah,
is
so judging by the
insecurity
stats that
escalating, or is it going down?
Yeah, it's definitely not going down. We've now seen different kinds of crime, even within the ones we already have. We're now seeing different mesticization under the different ones. So it's not like crime is going down. But if you want me to speak to the day-to-day or what exactly was as input as NIADG, that I can't say, because even as basic as the budget of the agency is classified, you know, it's same as the DSS, you know. So if I get to know about it, it's no longer an intelligence agency. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. But if I am to make a broad-based calculation on how his impact or the impact of the security agencies during his tenure has contributed to national security, I'd say it's not much. And I do think that most people expect the security institution to improve because, of course, they pay taxes to the government, and the number one function of government, or the number two function of government, is a protection of lives and properties on their domain, which we are currently not seeing. But I will make the bold statement or the bold claim that the Nigerian security services or the Nigerian security architecture is not designed with national security in focus. It's designed for regime security. So every other thing that even the creation of the NI as we know it from 1986, 1987, when Babangida had a regime dismantled the former National Security Organization and created the DMI, created the NI, created the DSS, it was to perpetuate his own rule, to keep him in office, to make the government coup-proof. That was why he did that. So it wasn't like as if since the return to civilian rule, that has largely changed. It hasn't changed. So the current security architecture is designed to protect the man in Aso Rock, not necessarily designed to protect the man on the streets. So in that particular case, if you look at it from such narrow perspective, you could say that they've done their work, they've done their best. But if you look at it from a national security perspective as to how bad things have gotten, I would not give them a pass mark on that.
Now, with his resignation, it means that an office is vacant, right? And it means that all eyes are now on the presidency or the legislative to see who is going to be taking up the role. What is in store for this person? What is this person to anticipate? What are they to anticipate if they are taking up this mantle? I
think one of the things they have to look out for is, I think, the president's own security agenda. President Tinubu has not really been that kind of a person that is big on security. His focus has mostly been on the economy. So, which was why when he got in, despite changing the service chiefs, he didn't really touch the intelligence chiefs. So I think he would really need to key into what the president's security agenda is, if he has any. And then from a regional perspective, where Nigeria is trying to gain back its influence, especially as regards ECOWAS, one of the things he has to do is to look at where Nigeria's security diplomacy has been badly beaten. One of the important things that Tinubu did, or which is profound, is that he replaced the outgoing DG with the head of Nigerian mission in Libya, which, of course, successive Nigerian governments have blamed the instability from that country as fueling the security problems in Nigeria. I think the Jonathan administration did the same. The Buhari administration did the same, saying that arms from Libya has flowed all the way from the border with Chad down to Nigeria. So I think, appointing that kind of a person comes with the kind of experience, especially security diplomacy along Nigeria's immediate and external borders. So one of the work that is cut out for him is how to leverage that influence, given the experience he has gained with his posting in Libya, to actually make Nigeria's security, to make Nigeria's domestic security better, and which would always come when there is an improved coordination between the NIA, the DSS, and whatever other agency that the Office of the National Security Advisor is actually supervising. In the past, we used to have these problems where they used to work in silos. I can speak for the security services, especially within the paramilitary and the military services, that there is an improved level of coordination. But for the intelligence services, I cannot see. So where the onus of that lies, not necessarily within the responsibility of the NIADG, it's for the Office of the National Security Advisor, whose office supervises these other agencies. So if he is able to coordinate the intelligence gathering and the intelligence deployment better, especially tailored towards national security, I do think that we're going to see an improvement in security situation going forward.
So no end in sight to our palaver?
There's not even one size fits all. There's no silver bullet for it. I think it's little improvements here, little improvements there that's going to that. And the problem, the mistake we keep making is in thinking that the situation to Nigeria's security crisis is kinetic. It is not. The problem is mostly economic. If you read the reports we are talking about, you see that the kidnap crisis has metastasized so badly that you're now seeing 15, 16-year-olds going into kidnapping, and then the kind of ransom they demand is crazy. And what exactly did they use it for? So it's to buy food to survive. So if you have a situation where you have even people at the lowest rung of society going into this and they don't care about their lives, I think more than using force, you have a bigger problem on your hands.
Well, if you started the show with us, I actually answered that question for Judith. I'm wondering why she forgot. Judith, don't you remember we sang it together?
One day, life will go better.
Yeah, a little joke from the start of the show. Thank you very much, Makari, for joining us and giving us some interesting
I love having you on
details
the show.
from that
Yeah,
report.
it's always very informative. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do
Confidence
stay
back, Harry.
tuned. Yes, indeed. Now do stay tuned because coming up we're going to be talking Wellness Extra, where we take a look at the Mpox instance that's ravaging across Africa and what Lagosians, Nigerians should know, as we have a doctor in to talk to us about it. Stay tuned.
And it's time for Wellness. Welcome to this very crucial segment that we call Wellness Extra, rather Wellness Central. And today we turn our attention to a pressing public health issue that has been making headlines across Africa. It's Mpox, a disease that has rapidly spread across various regions of the continent. In an unprecedented move, Nigeria recently received its first ever shipment of Mpox vaccines, a historic delivery that marks a significant step in the fight against this viral outbreak outside of clinical trials.
Now, as we delve into the implications of this development, we are honored to have with us distinguished guests. First off, Dr. Philip Njamanze, chairman of the International Institute of Advanced Research and Training at Shiite Medical Center. Dr. Njamanze, thank you very much. You're welcome.
And we also have joining us Dr. Walter Kazadi. He is a representative at WHO, that's World Health Organization. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate you for joining us today. Let me start with you, Dr. Walter. What's your stance on the newly acquired vaccines by the Nigerian government?
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me on this program. Nigeria received Mpox vaccine last week. It was actually the first country in Africa to receive Mpox vaccine through a donation through the US government. The vaccine is part of the countermeasures that are used to control the Mpox outbreak that is going on and that has been exacerbated recently. It's a known vaccine. It has been used before for smallpox, and it's also shown efficacy against the Mpox virus. So it has happened, and I know that Nigeria has a strategy to roll out the vaccine. I'm aware that Nigeria is targeting about 5,000 people, including healthcare workers and high-risk population and community, to deploy the vaccine. It's a two-dose vaccine. As you know, it's not yet enough, but it's there. So it's and I'm glad Nigeria will be showing the way on how to use effectively this vaccine alongside other control measures, including contact tracing, case management, laboratory diagnosis, infection prevention and control, and others. So I just want to emphasize that it's not vaccine alone that will control the Mpox, but it's a combination of all measures. Over.
Okay, that's very interesting. We're going to come back and ask about the details regarding the combination of all these efforts that you spoke about. But Dr. Njamanze is also here with us. Dr. Njamanze, would like to know what your stance is regarding the vaccines acquired by the Nigerian government as well. I think we're still trying to establish proper communication with you, sir. So we'll work on that one. Now, Dr. Kazadi, let me come back to you. Now, could you please give us a present situation of the Mpox virus in Africa currently as it stands? We are aware that it's not yet in Nigeria. It's not in Nigeria, and we're hoping that we don't get it here in Nigeria. But what is the current situation outside of Nigeria?
Okay, thank you. As you know, Mpox outbreak is on since January last year, or in 2022, sorry. It was declared a public health emergency of international concern at some point until the emergency phase was closed. in May last year. But it has been reopened because of the recent upsurge in Central Africa, particularly in the DRC, and the spread to other countries around DRC. The current alert was triggered by the appearance of the new, subtype of the virus. There are some, there are variants of the virus called the clade. So far, it was clade 2 that was known that triggered the outbreak, which was called off last year. But this year, the current upsurge it was triggered by appearance of a clade 1b in Eastern DRC, and has quickly spread to other countries in the region. So far, since January 2022, 121 member states have reported Mpox outbreak to WHO in the 6th region, including the African region. But as of July this year, a total of 102,000 laboratory confirmed cases, including 223 deaths, were reported. This was an increase by 8.8% from last year. So in the African region, which is basically sub-Saharan Africa, we have 47 countries. The bulk of these cases are reported in about 12 countries, and they constitute 55% of the global burden. And the other 24% is from the Americas, and the rest of the region share the rest of the burden. So, as I said, we've seen an increase in cases, particularly in July, and there are also new countries who have never reported Mpox vaccine, 5 of them, who are also reporting vaccine, and most importantly, clade 1b, that is more virulent as we speak. So we have around 3,500 cases reported so far this year for Mpox, but from January 2022, it's up to a little bit above 5,000 cases. So this is overall the situation of Mpox outside Nigeria. I know Nigeria CDC was already communicated the number of cases that were detected in Nigeria, mostly in the 5 states. But of course, that's to NCDC to give the latest update. But from what we receive from WHO, we understand that Nigeria so far has reported 40 confirmed cases.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kazadi. We have Dr. Njamanze back with us. Now, Dr. Njamanze, I was asking earlier what your stance is regarding the newly acquired vaccine by the Nigerian government. If you will please help tell. Dr. Njamanze, please go ahead.
Hello?
Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
I can't hear them and they can't hear me. I don't know whether I should try.
All right, I think we still have some work to do when it comes to the connection with Dr. Njamanze. There, we're having some problems. Apologies about
Apologies for that. Dr. Kazadi, let me come back to you and ask about this other alternative measures that you talked about earlier on. You said it's a combination of these measures plus a vaccine that will stop the spread of it. I would like for you to speak on the alternative measures that you propose for controlling the spread of Mpox in African countries.
WHO has developed a strategic preparedness and response plan for Mpox, and the strategies are around 5 key pillars. The one is collaborative surveillance, making sure that human surveillance, collaborative veterinary surveillance, environmental surveillance, because as you know, Mpox is a zoonosis, basically, even if it can require the capability to spread between humans. So it's important that countries put in place the collaborative surveillance so that different sectors could provide data that could then be analyzed to monitor the spread of the disease. The second component is the community engagement and empowerment. The communities themselves need to be aware of the symptoms, how they spread, and how to avoid them. So it's an important component, and we do that through risk communication and community engagement. The third strategy is access to scalable and quality care, and that's why we have case management, which is mostly symptomatic and trying to stabilize the body compartment, but also some of the treatment that are being tried, some antiviral, to see if they may be effective. But I have to emphasize that we are at the stage of trying treatment rather than existing treatment, which is mostly symptomatic. The fourth the component is access to countermeasures, including vaccines, but also other therapeutic that may be under research. All of that need to be, backed on proper emergency coordination to make sure that we have a whole of society, whole of government approach. We collaborate with private sector, the government, NGOs, and others to make sure that there is this, mechanism in place for better accountability and also tracking of the response. So that are the five strategies that are part of the overall preparedness and response plan. And the vaccines are under countermeasures, as I said before. In each of these pillars, you have detailed measures that each country can put in place to control the outbreak. Over.
Now, Dr. Njemanzi, I understand you're back now. Dr. Kezadi just went through the steps in terms of measures to curtail the spread of Mpox. What is your take on vaccines or your stance on Nigeria's acquisition of these vaccines from Spain?
Used to have some vaccines for Mpox, but you have to remember.
Apologies there, Dr. Njemanzi. We cannot hear you, unfortunately. We'll have to make this arrangement at a later time to make sure we get your opinion regarding the vaccines. However, Dr. Kezadi, I'm going to come back to you and back to the vaccine. You've noted the different strains of the new Mpox that we are witnessing in Africa here, Cat 1B especially. And there are plenty of arguments regarding the use of vaccines in different diseases, not just regarding the Mpox. Now, are there any risk factors associated with the use of these vaccines, especially these ones that have been acquired by the Nigerian government? What must we know?
The vaccine that the Nigerian government has acquired is safe. It has been tested, it has been used before for smallpox. The smallpox virus and the Mpox virus are similar. They are part of the same family, the orthopox virus. So because they are from the same family, they do share the same antigen. And that is the rationale for using this particular vaccine for Mpox, irrespective of the clade. So on a proof of concept basis, the vaccine should be effective. It has been tried before and it has also shown to be effective. There is no risk known to the use of this vaccine. But however, as you recall, when the Director General, Dr. Tedros, declared Mpox as a public health emergency of international concern, he also activated the emergency use list. The emergency use list is a mechanism to facilitate, accelerated production of a control measure, in this case, the vaccine. So manufacturers have been contacted to submit dossier to enable the strategic advisory group of experts on vaccine and immunization to give an opinion on the extent to which the vaccine can be used. But at the same time, the vaccine could be used for under compassionate ground to make sure that we avoid unnecessary death that could have been averted by the use of vaccine alongside other control measures. So long as we are aware, the vaccine is safe. It can be used. It was used before in humans. And however, any vaccine, any new vaccine that is being used has to be, for any vaccine that is being used, there has to be some measures to monitor possible side effect that may result from the immunization overall. But that's the monitoring of possible side effect is part of the plan and strategy that NPACDA has put in place to, to continue to monitor both the effectiveness, deployment, but also potential side effect, which usually happen in very, very slow proportion of vaccination.
Doctor, as we wrap up this conversation, I'm going to use myself as an example. I'm a Nigerian. I'm watching this at home. I've been hearing about monkeypox and Mpox. It's now in 5 states, spreading across Africa. A vaccine is coming. But how can I identify monkeypox? What are the symptoms? And how best can I not get infected by monkeypox whilst I wait for a vaccination?
Yes, monkeypox is it's a disease caused by the virus, the Mpox virus. The way you know that we have Mpox, it comes with generally, after you have been in contact with an infected person, you develop fever, headache, body ache. They are just generic symptoms like malaria, for instance. But then after a few days, you'll see the appearance of skin rash on your face, the body, but also on your arms, etc. So, and this can happen between 3 days, even 21 days, up to 21 days of being in contact with an infected person. So the disease can spread through close, intimate contact, including sexual transmission. It could also spread through what we call the fomite. For instance, if somebody who has Mpox touches the handle or a door, or using the same plate, and another person come and touch that place with, some of the liquid that came up of the lesion from the infected person, you can get infected. So it can spread through intimate contact. It can spread through fomite. It can spread through, sexual transmission, but also it can be transmitted zoonotically from, wild animals in the bush.
So clearly, all we have to do is make sure to wash our hands and stay sanitized as much as possible, and try not to be too close to people. And also ask them, do you have any mysterious rash that you don't know about? But Dr. Kasadi, we appreciate you for coming on. Thank you so much for doing this with us today.
Yeah, we apologize that we couldn't have Dr. Anjamanti, but thank you very much, Dr. Kasadi, once again.
It's a pleasure.
Stay tuned, because we've got one more conversation coming your way today on Breakfast Extra. We'll be back. Stay tuned. Welcome back. And our final discussion for today, we've been talking about detention from the start of the show, and well, we've come to this. A 26-year-old man was recently jailed for sending a resignation text to his former boss. Now, the incident, which sparked widespread outrage, highlights the complex legal challenges surrounding employment rights and the proper protocol for resignation. After spending time behind bars, the young man has finally regained his freedom, raising critical questions about justice and workers' rights in Nigeria.
So from spending 2 days in police detention, he ended up being charged for intentional insult, locked up in a room with 189 other cellmates at a prison in Kefi because he could not afford the bail sum, initially 100,000 naira and later 50,000 naira. He remained there even after the said boss, a politician in this current administration, and owner of a popular photography studio in FCT, wrote a letter to the court withdrawing the charge. And so today, we're joined by Faith Agu Esquire, a seasoned legal practitioner, to shed light on this case and discuss the legal implications of the situation. Faith, you are welcome.
Faith, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so for the sake of our viewers, could you please explain the matter of bail and how it applies here?
Okay, first of all, we have 3 types of bail. We have the administrative bail, which is from the police station. Then we also have the court bail. Then later you have the bail pending appeal. Now, in this situation now, this matter is not something that is a criminal offense. In the first place, you don't charge somebody for an offense that is unknown to our law. Now, when I read the story about intentional insult, it's not an offense known to Nigerian law. So taking somebody to court, even to the police, and then getting the person arrested, I believe the police and the enforcement agents are supposed to know better. In the first place, it's not something that should even get to the courts, not to talk of getting arrested or getting jailed. So that is one of the major issue of this matter, is that the matter is not even an offense. Now, the second part, when it comes to bail, over the years, we have issue of getting bail being very stringent. They'll tell you to get your bail bond, sureties, and this has made a lot of people, they will stay in jail for a long time because they are trying to process their bail, you know, for an offense that is very minor. So that is another issue we face in Nigeria. Do you understand? So I just think the guy was wrongfully detained and he was wrongfully jailed. And it's, yes.
So in the case of bail payment, now who's supposed to pay that amount? Is it even supposed to be paid, or is it something that is just in lieu of perhaps this person jumping bail?
Exactly. Now, is the surety like supposed to drop a bail bond?
You can use this as an example. Like, for instance, if she's committed an offense, which she often does.
I know you're just looking for a way to do this, aren't you?
And I'm her surety. So do I have to pay that amount?
No, it's not in every situation they make bail that kind of complicated. Sometimes when the magistrate or the judge sees that this person is someone that cannot even get bail bond or a surety, they could just, you know, grant you bail on liberal terms. Now, another thing is that the process of getting a surety, sometimes they will tell you get a level 18 of a civil servant and all, is hard. Many people don't even want to stand surety these days. I don't know, will you want to stand surety because of the fear? If the person jumps bail, they will come and hold me or something. So
would I be held, or would the money I'm
that
paying
is a
be lost?
That is the fear people are having now. And even sometimes, on very rare occasions, they hold the sureties. That is another fear people have of being sureties for a bail. Now, so the thing is making it very difficult for administration of justice.
Speaking of difficulty, the photographer spent 10 months in prison. He's now been released. What legal redress what are the options for him? Would he be seeking compensation from a legal standpoint? What is there for him? Because clearly this is an unlawful imprisonment.
Yeah. It can enforce his fundamental human rights. It has been breached from the very beginning, from the police station that charged him to courts, to even the courts that held him for an offense that is not known to court, to the law, which is intentional insults. As in, it's not something, it's unheard of. So he can enforce his fundamental human right. There are a lot of organizations, even the Attorney General needs to weigh in on this. There are a lot of organizations that could help him, that could support him to enforce his rights.
What about compensation?
Of course, that is one of the things you get when you enforce your rights. You get compensation. You get compensation, you get redress, you get the people that breached your rights have to go in for it. So those are the things, there's compensation in it. So they can't just go scot-free. So it needs to, and that's one of the issues we're having in Nigeria, is because a lot of people don't want to enforce their rights. Many people don't even know their rights in the first place.
Why do you think that is? Is it the fear? Is it fear of the law enforcement? Is it fear of the citizens that they are seeking redress from, or is it the clogged judiciary or judicial system that we have?
Everything summed together. Yes, Now, when you think of the process of getting justice, sometimes a lot of adjournments and all, sometimes even monetarily, financially, many people can't even afford it. So this makes people, they just sit on the right, like they'll just let it go. But in the first place, there are a lot of things that you should know as a Nigerian. There are a lot of rights you should know. And if many people don't even know their rights in Nigeria. Many people don't. You see, for example, a landlord taking a tenant to police station. This is purely civil. When there's a civil matter, you're not even supposed to go to the police station. It's not something, they don't have jurisdiction over it. But many people don't know. So they just swallow it because they're ignorant of it. So the first thing is, I think we should try to educate the citizens more on their rights. Secondary schools should be taught about their rights. You know, from secondary school, you should know your rights so that as you're going, you know things that should not be done to you as a Nigerian.
Civic responsibility and civic obedience. I forgot, there's a civic education, there we go. But they didn't teach us human rights. They're teaching us, social studies.
Are there any lessons for individuals, whether employers or employees, to learn from this? Employers especially, I mean.
Employers, you don't, it's mostly employers, because in this situation, I don't see anything. In fact, there is nothing wrong in resigning via text message. There's absolutely nothing. There's no offense as proper. Now, if the person slanders you, there are ways to go about it. But in this situation, it's not a slander. Now, slander is when, or libel, is when I make a publication that a third party hears. Now, a message between two people, there's no third party involved. So it's not defamation. Now, this is a pure case of the employer trying to intimidate the employee. I want to show you I'm the boss. I know a lot of people. I want to deal with you. So I think they cut through a lot of processes to get that person in jail.
Just really sad. Our hearts goes out, but we're so glad he's gained his freedom, is out and about, and also let this be a call, a charge to employers and people at a position of power, exploiting your power and using that to enforce and subject and, you know, oppress your employees and young. It's wrong, and you are infringing on their human rights, and they're coming for you. One day is one day. Well, Faith Agu
That's
Esquire.
how we started the show, isn't it?
Faith Agu Esquire is our guest today. She's talking to us about the photographer who spent 10 months in prison, and she's talking to us about his human rights and, you know, what legal options he would take to seek redress. And that's all we can take for today's show. Faith, many thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Indeed.
That's how we wrap up the show for today.
It's only a Saturday edition. We still have one more to go, so join us tomorrow for the Sunday edition of Breakfast Extra. And just like we started the show, would like to let every Nigerian out there know that one day, ego better. Thank you. Goodbye. See you tomorrow.